On a freezing winter afternoon, the girl who had once been the brightest star at this school now sat quietly alone, just 9 years old, frail and forgotten because of illness. In the moment she felt most alone and hopeless, a black janitor quietly sat beside her. No empty words, no forced comfort, just a warm cup of tea gently placed between them. Neither of them knew that this simple act would change both of their lives forever. Before we dive in this story, let us know where you're watching from. We love to hear your thought. Wellington Academy was the kind of place that gleamed with ambition. Everything was polished, perfected, built for futures lined in ivy. And once Savannah Blake had been its brightest star. She moved through its marble corridors like a promise, long blonde hair trailing behind her, ballet slippers tapping like punctuation, her paintings hanging in glass cases on the east wing. People didn't just admire Savannah, they saw her as the blueprint. The daughter of biotech billionaires, she was beauty, talent, legacy wrapped into one. But that girl was gone. Now she walked the same halls in silence, head low beneath a gray wool beanie. Her figure was thinner, movements slower. Her cheeks, once rosy, had the pale flush of chemotherapy. Her lips cracked at the corners. Her eyes dim, distant. No longer looked up. No one truly looked at her anymore. A few offered stiff smiles or quick nods before turning away. At lunch, the seat beside her remained empty, even when every other table was full. Conversation stopped when she entered, replaced by whispers. I heard she might not make it to graduation. Is leukemia contagious? She heard it all. Every careless word folded itself into the hollowness she carried. And worse than the fear was the pity. The way teachers now smiled too wide, talked too slow, treating her like glass about to shatter. No one asked what she needed. No one said the truth out loud. She didn't want to be strong. She didn't want to be a symbol. She just wanted someone to see her, not what she used to be, not what they feared she was becoming, but her, now. But ever since she got sick, the light no longer touched her. It passed her by. The wind had a bite that afternoon, sharp and dry, pulling at the edges of Savannah's coat as she sat behind the gym, where no one ever came unless they wanted to disappear. She was curled into herself, knees pulled tight, forehead resting on her sleeves. Her head ached. Her eyes burned. The pain wasn't sharp, it was dull, deep, constant, like a hum under her skin. She didn't want to be seen. Not by teachers with soft voices and too wide smiles, not by students who offered glances soaked in fear or awkward kindness. Not even by the mirror, which no longer reflected the girl framed in yearbook photos or dance trophies. She didn't want to be a memory, she wanted to be gone. That's when she heard footsteps. Soft, measured, unhurried. She didn't look up, but the scent of lemon cleanser came first, followed by the gentle clink of ceramic. Someone placed a small, steaming mug on the bench beside her, and next to it a thick gray beanie. Hand-knitted, slightly frayed. Then the woman sat, not too close, not far, just there. It was Ms. Delilah Carter, the school janitor, the only black adult Savannah had seen at Wellington, not behind a desk or a cafeteria line. She had only started a few weeks ago, transferred from another district. Most students hadn't noticed her arrival. Ms. Carter herself didn't know many names yet, and Savannah's face, now hidden beneath layers of winter and silence, didn't register as anyone special. Savannah barely knew her name. No one really did. Most students looked past her, but not today. Miss Carter didn't ask if she was okay. Didn't give her one of those lines meant to comfort but only deepened the ache. She simply watched the trees across the field like they were speaking and she was listening. After a while, Savannah whispered, "You don't have to do this." "I know." A pause stretched between them like breath held too long. "Everyone else tries to help," Savannah said, her voice shaking, "but it's like they're talking to who I used to be, not now." Miss Carter nodded slowly. "That's 'cause they look through you, baby, like glass. Folks get scared when they see something they can't fix." Savannah's voice cracked. "So why aren't you scared?" Miss Carter finally turned, not with pity, but with something firmer. I've been stepped around my whole life, too black, too quiet, too much, so no, I ain't scared of a sick white girl. I'm scared of how this place teaches people to look away. It hit hard, too true. I'm not who I was, Savannah said, barely above a whisper. Good, Miss Carter replied. Maybe who you were wasn't ready for what comes next. Savannah's eyes stung, not from pain but from the gentleness of being seen. For the first time in months, the silence around her didn't feel empty. It felt held. And when she reached for the mug, her hand still trembling slightly, it wasn't for the warmth of the tea. It was for the warmth of knowing someone stayed. The days that followed moved quietly, like leaves drifting in wind, unhurried, without announcement. Savannah never told anyone about the bench behind the gym, or the tea, or the silence that didn't hurt. But something had shifted. Subtle, like light turning at dusk. Miss Carter came again the next day. And the next. She never said, "I'm here for you." She never asked how Savannah was feeling. She simply showed up, present, predictable, steady. Sometimes she brought small things, a scarf, a paper cup of soup, a used novel with pages folded like someone had lived through them. None of it asked for gratitude. It just existed. Quiet gifts for a girl still learning how to stay. They never sat too close. Sometimes Savannah drew, sometimes she didn't. Miss Carter swept leaves or wiped benches or just stood watching the trees breathe. The silence between them grew dense, not awkward, not empty. Full. By the fifth afternoon, Savannah finally broke it. "You don't have to keep doing this," she said, not looking up from the blank page on her lap. Miss Carter leaned on her broom. "Doing what?" "This, being here. You don't even know me." Miss Carter shrugged, her eyes soft. "Maybe I don't need to know your name to see you." That landed deeper than Savannah expected. She lowered her pencil. Everyone else, they smile and say, "I'm brave," or "beautiful," but they don't mean it. They're scared, or sorry, or both. Miss Carter sat down slowly, joints quiet but deliberate. "Baby, people think sadness is a thing to be solved, that it's too heavy to hold. So they hand you words that look shiny but don't weigh a thing." Savannah looked at her, really looked, and for the first time didn't see herself reflected as a patient or a burden. "I feel broken," she whispered. Miss Carter didn't flinch. "You're not broken. You're just feeling everything you haven't had space to feel." They sat that way for a while. Two figures in winter coats, side by side, not needing to fill the silence. The cold didn't bite as hard that day. Or maybe the stillness between them made the cold feel like less. Savannah opened her sketchbook, pencil light. She drew without thinking. Herself, bald and small, sitting beneath a tree. Beside her, another figure, dark, still, grounded. Their outlines didn't touch, but their shadows did. When she finished, she didn't show the drawing. She didn't need to. She closed the notebook gently and whispered, "Thank you for not talking me out of being sad." Miss Carter gave a soft smile. "Sadness don't need fixing, baby. It just needs somewhere to sit down." And in that moment, Savannah finally let it. She didn't feel healed, but she felt human, and that was enough. The art room still smelled like turpentine and clay. Nothing had changed, not the walls lined with student projects, not the bright sweater Miss Hathaway wore like it could cheer people into feeling okay. Savannah hadn't been here in weeks, maybe longer, but now she sat at her old desk, sketchbook open, pencil in hand. Her breath was tight in her chest. "Today's prompt," Miss Hathaway announced, her voice floating like something rehearsed, "is a self-portrait. Not just how you look, how you feel. Draw your essence, and remember," she smiled too brightly, "make it beautiful." The word landed like a slap. Savannah didn't move. Around her, students began sketching themselves. Lashes, cheekbones, perfect symmetry. She stared at her blank page. Essence. What did that even mean now? She drew her shoulders, the faint hollow of her collarbone, the dress she wore last spring before everything changed. Then she stopped. The pencil hovered over the page. There was no hair to draw, no frame of softness to hide behind. Her hand trembled. So she didn't draw ahead. Instead, she drew a swirling storm, rough, sharp, open, a vortex where her face used to be. It was raw, and it was true. Miss Hathaway walked the room, offering compliments that didn't stick. When she reached Savannah, she paused. "Oh," she said too softly. "That's interesting." Savannah didn't look up. "You could," the teacher offered, "draw your hair the way it used to be, long, golden, beautiful, just to balance the piece." The room quieted. Someone coughed, a pencil scratched, then stopped. Savannah finally looked up, voice steady but cold. "That hair is gone. It's not who I am anymore." Miss Hathaway blinked. "Of course, dear, just a suggestion. No need to get upset." Savannah didn't answer. She closed her sketchbook and stood. No one stopped her as she walked out. She made it halfway down the hallway before her knees buckled. She sat on the stairs, hands clenched, trying not to cry. They didn't see her, not really. Just her old reflection. The one that fit their idea of beauty, of belonging. But then, through the silence, she remembered Ms. Carter's voice. Sometimes sadness just needs somewhere to sit down. So Savannah let herself sit. In the ache, in the anger, in the truth that she wasn't their golden girl anymore, and maybe that was okay. She closed her eyes, breathing through it, and realized that storm she drew? It wasn't emptiness. It was space, room to become something new. That night, Savannah didn't come down for dinner. She stayed in her room, curled beneath a pile of blankets that no longer brought comfort. The house was too quiet. Every sound, the ticking clock, the hum of the heater, her mother's soft footsteps in the hallway, felt like pressure against her skin. She stared at the ceiling until the edges blurred. Her chest was tight, her arms numb, her throat raw from holding in what wanted to escape. When her mother finally knocked, Savannah didn't answer. The door opened slowly, and Alicia Blake stood there with a tray in hand. Chicken broth, crackers, pills in a tiny porcelain dish. Her voice was careful, like walking across thin ice. "Sweetheart, you need to eat something, and it's time for your meds." Savannah turned away. "I'm not hungry." Her mother paused. "You can't skip another dose, Savy. We talked about this." "I don't care." There was silence, the kind that wasn't patient, just tired. Alicia set the tray on the dresser and crossed the room. "You're stronger than this. You're my little warrior." At that, Savannah sat up slowly, her eyes burning. "Stop calling me that." Her mother blinked. "Calling you what? A warrior? Like this is something noble, like I should be proud of losing my hair and puking into plastic bags and watching people pretend I still belong." Her voice cracked. "I'm not strong. I'm just exhausted." Alicia knelt beside the bed, reaching for her daughter's hand, but Savannah pulled it back. "You don't get it. You still talk about me like I'm the same girl from last year, but I'm not. She's gone, she's dead. And I don't want to fight anymore if it means pretending she's still here." Her mother froze, stricken, and for a moment the only sound was Savannah's breathing, ragged, rising, uneven. Then Alicia stood up too quickly and walked out without another word. Savannah sat in the darkness for a long time, trembling. She didn't touch the tray. She didn't move until morning. The next day, she didn't go to class. She wandered the edges of the school grounds, ending up at the back courtyard, where the trees were still bare from winter. Miss Carter was there, as if she knew. She didn't speak at first, just looked at Savannah the way she always did, without expectation, without fear. Savannah didn't sit this time. She stood, arms crossed, chin trembling. "I didn't take my medicine." Miss Carter raised an eyebrow. "That so?" Savannah nodded. "And I don't know if I will. I don't want to keep pretending. I hate my body. I hate that everyone talks to me like I'm fragile or brave or inspiring when all I am is tired of being here." Miss Carter didn't flinch. She leaned on her broom and let the words hang between them like clothes on a line. Then she said, quiet but firm, "You ever met someone who shaved their head on purpose? Savannah blinked, caught off guard. "What?" Ms. Carter looked out across the grass. "My baby sister, Lenora. She had hair so thick it could have made 10 pillows, curls like rain clouds. But when she turned 17, she shaved it all off. Clean, bald as truth. Folks thought she'd gone crazy, but you know what she said?" Savannah didn't answer. Ms. Carter smiled, a small, sad thing. She said, "I'm not sick. I just want the world to stop loving me for something I didn't earn. Let them love what's left when that's gone." She let that settle. Lenora didn't have cancer, she wasn't dying, but she knew what it meant to lose something the world told her was everything, and she still stood tall. Said if you can love yourself when you're stripped down to your bone, your real, scared, furious bone, then maybe that's the only love that matters. Savannah's mouth parted, but no sound came. Ms. Carter stepped forward, closing the distance just enough to be felt. "You don't have to be a warrior, baby. But don't you let this pain trick you into disappearing. You're still here, you hear me, right now, still breathing, still becoming." The wind picked up. Savannah pulled the scarf tighter around her neck and felt the first tear fall, silent, hot, clean. She wiped it slowly, then sat down beside Miss Carter for the first time without being invited. She didn't say thank you. Didn't need to. Some things were too true for words. A week passed. The days moved like breath again, slower but steadier. Savannah began taking her medicine not because someone told her to, but because she chose to. She didn't call it fighting. She didn't call it bravery. She called it staying. Some mornings were still heavy, some nights still sharp, but there was space between the ache now. And that space, small as it was, held light. Miss Carter didn't mention the breakdown, didn't reference the tears, didn't treat Savannah like anything had changed. And maybe that was the point. Healing wasn't something to announce, it was something to protect. And so they kept their rhythm. Afternoons by the courtyard, quiet offerings passed without words. Then, on a Monday that arrived like any other, Miss Carter appeared carrying a wrapped package tucked beneath her arm. Her gait was slower than usual, her shoulders more hunched, her eyes a shade dimmer. Savannah noticed, but didn't ask. She knew better now. Some things come to the surface on their own time. They sat, side by side. "I brought something for you," Miss Carter said, setting the bundle on Savannah's lap. "Don't rush. Open it when you're ready." Savannah looked at her, then down at the wrapping, rough brown paper tied with string. She undid the knot slowly, carefully peeling the edges as though whatever waited inside might vanish if she moved too fast. When the final fold came free, she gasped. It was a painting. Not large, not loud, but full. It showed a girl sitting cross-legged in a field of pale green grass. She was bald, bare, but not small, not sick. Her eyes were closed, her head tilted back toward a sky with no sun, and yet light radiated from her chest, soft and golden, bleeding into the air like breath made visible. Around her, scattered across the grass, were strands of hair, not mourned, not messy, just released, as if they'd been set free. Below the figure, in brush-stroke letters that trembled just enough to feel real, were the words, "You don't need hair to shine, you just need to be seen truthfully." Savannah's hands began to shake, her vision blurred. She pressed her fingers against her mouth, trying to hold something in, but it broke through anyway, a sob, low and deep, the kind that came from places language couldn't touch. She'd seen 1,000 portraits of herself before, photos, paintings, school awards, framed snapshots of a girl in motion, always smiling, always styled, always shining, for someone else's eyes. But this was the first time she had been witnessed. She looked over at Miss Carter, whose expression was still, her hands folded gently in her lap. "You painted this?" Savannah asked, her voice barely more than a breath. Ms. Carter nodded. "Started it the day you told me you didn't feel like yourself anymore. Finished it the day you stayed." Savannah stared at the painting again, her tears falling silently onto her sleeves. There was no pity in the colors, no sadness in the light, only presence, only truth. "It's beautiful," she whispered, "but not in the way people usually mean. It's right." Miss Carter let out a soft laugh. "That's the best kind." Savannah didn't speak after that. She didn't need to. She clutched the painting close to her chest, feeling its warmth seep through the canvas and into her ribs. The wind moved around them, and for the first time Savannah didn't brace against it. She let it pass, let it lift, let it carry. She didn't feel finished, not even close. But she no longer felt invisible. She felt seen. Spring arrived quietly. It didn't burst through the door or sing from the treetops. It crept in, through warmer air, softer mornings, and a kind of stillness that felt more like breath than silence. Savannah started to walk through the school again without shrinking. Her scarf was still wrapped tight around her head, but her shoulders sat differently now, not hunched, not hiding. When people looked at her, some with curiosity, some with discomfort, she didn't flinch. She didn't smile to make them comfortable either. She just met their eyes and held her ground. And that was new. In the art room, she opened her sketchbook without hesitation. She still drew spirals sometimes, swirling, open, wild, but they weren't storms anymore. They were space. Her teacher noticed, tried once again to comment on her progress, but Savannah didn't need her approval anymore. She knew the truth. Her art didn't need to make sense to anyone else. It only needed to be real. Her parents watched her with a kind of awe, not because she was back to normal, but because she wasn't pretending anymore. Savannah started talking, not about illness, but about self. About how tired she was of being treated like a symbol instead of a person. About how it felt to have people love your hair but not your voice. And when she spoke, her mother cried, not from pity, but from the shock of finally hearing her daughter as she was, not as she had been. Then, one golden afternoon, Savannah walked across the courtyard and, without hesitation, threw her arms around Miss Carter. The older woman laughed, surprised, her body soft with warmth and age and work. "What's this for?" Savannah pulled back just enough to speak. "For not trying to make me happy, for staying when I couldn't speak, for seeing me when everyone else just remembered me." Miss Carter cupped the girl's face gently, her thumbs just grazing the corners of Savannah's jaw. "You did all the work, baby. I just kept showing up." But Savannah shook her head. "That's the part people don't do. That's the part that saved me." And in the days that followed, things changed. Not the world, not yet, but the ground beneath it. Savannah approached her father with quiet certainty. She told him about Miss Carter's sister, about the painting, about all the moments that never made it into report cards or school board meetings, and she asked for something specific, something real. What followed wasn't a grand announcement, it was paperwork, quiet approvals, one email at a time. Miss Carter's sister, who had spent the last year on a hospital wait list, received funding for lifelong dialysis care, covered fully and without expiration. A scholarship was created in Miss Carter's name, not just for artists, but for caretakers, for those who stayed, for those who watched over others in silence. No cameras, no headlines, just restoration. The day Savannah handed Miss Carter the letter confirming the scholarship, the woman stood frozen, fingers trembling over the envelope. "Why would you do this for me?" Savannah smiled, eyes clear, voice steady. "Because no one else would have thought to, and because you didn't need a podium to change my life. You just needed a bench." Miss Carter didn't cry, but she sat down as if the moment had weight, and when she looked at Savannah, really looked, there was something close to pride in her eyes, the quiet kind, the kind that stays. That spring, Savannah was not the girl she used to be. She was something else now. Not broken, not brave, just true. The final day of the school year came dressed in gold. The air shimmered with the kind of warmth that lingers on skin, that clings to the inside of collars and sleeves. In the grand atrium of Wellington Academy, rows of white chairs were set in perfect lines, facing a stage draped in the school's signature navy and gold. Parents took their seats with polite murmurs, students adjusted their ties and hairbands, teachers rehearsed smiles they'd been wearing all year. It was by every appearance a perfect ceremony. But then something unexpected happened. Just before the closing speech, the head of school stepped aside, making room for a final presentation. A tall easel covered with a linen cloth was carried to the center of the stage. No introduction, no explanation, only the quiet hush of curiosity spreading like ripples. When the cloth was pulled back, a murmur passed through the room. It was a painting, not framed in gold, not polished to perfection, but striking in its truth. It showed a black woman sitting beneath a large tree, her hands resting on her knees, her eyes looking outward, not down, not up, but forward, with the calm of someone who had seen too much and stayed anyway. Beside her sat a young girl, bald, radiant, grinning wide, with teeth and light. The two figures didn't touch, but the space between them glowed, not with sunlight, but with something deeper, something made of presence. At the bottom of the canvas, in deliberate brushstrokes, were the words, "She swept away my fear, so I could see the light was never in my hair." The crowd was silent. Some shifted in their seats, others leaned forward. Only a few truly understood. Savannah watched from the back of the room, hands folded neatly in her lap. Her scarf was gone now, not in defiance, not in performance, but in peace. Her head caught the light like smooth stone, her eyes steady, her smile small but sure. She didn't need to stand on stage. Her truth was already there. Across the room, Ms. Carter stood by a side pillar, half in shadow. She wasn't dressed up, she didn't wear a name badge, but when her eyes met Savannah's, they both smiled the kind of smile that doesn't ask to be witnessed, it just exists. After the ceremony, people would walk by the painting. Some would say it was beautiful, some would say it was brave, some wouldn't understand it at all. But the ones who mattered, the ones who stayed behind after the chairs were folded and the lights were dimmed, stood longer. They let it speak to them, and some, without knowing why, left feeling changed. Savannah didn't need the last word. She had something better. She had become her own shape. She had learned that light doesn't come from applause or approval or what others remember of you. It comes from being seen exactly as you are, and choosing to stay. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.